I am super excited to say that the only reason I am able to even come out with this episode is the sponsor of today's episode. So if you haven't heard about Anchor, it is one of the greatest things to use to make a podcast. First, it's free. Second, they have all these tools that you can use to record, edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. I do it from my phone because it's much easier. I literally just bought one of those mics from the Apple store, plug it in, and now I just talk and it's great. Also, you can distribute the podcast wherever you want. Anchor does that for you. It can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think Stitcher, so many other places. And you can make money from the podcast. And yeah, you can start it right away with an advertisement like this. So make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It is everything you need to make podcasts in one place.
What's up, everybody? It's Dante, a.k.a. The Forensics Guy, and you are listening to The Forensics Experience, the podcast where we discuss topics in the speech and debate community with the world's most influential coaches, students, and alumni in the activity. And today, I am honored as I've always been, but even just a little bit more, to be sitting with Adesuwa Omoruyi. And she is an amazing, amazing coach, and I'm excited for her to talk to you a little bit about some great things that I have for today. So feel free to introduce yourself to the audience and let us know, what do you do in the speech and debate community?
Why, thank you so much, Dante. Hello, everyone. My name is Adesuwa Omoruyi. I'm the Director of Forensics at Alief Taylor High School in Houston, Texas. I also do a little bit of everything for anyone who needs it. One of my coolest roles, or one of my favorite roles that I have in the forensics community, is being one of the leaders of the Black Coaches Caucus for the National Speech and Debate Association with Mr. Aaron Simmons. That's by far the funnest thing that I do for the community. But enough about me. Let's get into this podcast.
Let's do it. So today we are going to be talking about some great things, and I want to start off, especially since this is one of the parts of the topic, I'm going to start off with a trigger warning for anyone who might be triggered specifically about some of the topics that we'll be discussing. I feel like we'll probably get into some things that might involve some words that are representative of certain communities, as well as we'll be generally talking about trigger warnings, so that could be triggering to a person. So I would want those people to be in the most safest confines. So if you are listening and you prefer to listen with someone, this would be a great chance to grab a friend, a parent, or whoever you think would be an accountability partner for you to make sure that you are at your most calm, basically, to be able to listen to this with all ears. And we will begin. A lot of questions that I have been thinking about, and I want to make sure that this is a great episode for everyone. So let's actually start off with the hard-hitting stuff. I know that this is a topic that sometimes is brought up, so let's get into it. Question: can non-Black or African-American students say the N-word in their interp speech?
Okay. Trigger warning for anyone listening. In case you didn't hear it before, this is going to be one of those moments, so please clutch your pearls. If we're going to sit and ask ourselves if we should allow individuals who do not identify as Black to use the N-word or say nigger, hard, E-R, even A-R, in their interpretation performances, I think we need to take a second and we need to turn the mirror a little bit.
Okay.
How would Asian individuals feel if other races and nationalities use the word chink in their interpretation selections?
That is a good point.
How would white people feel if they were watching interp selections where they were constantly being ridiculed with the word cracker? both of these words that I just said are considered to be racial slurs, but none of them hold half of the negative connotations that have been associated with nigger or nigga throughout history. So if me saying chink or cracker made you clutch your pearls and go, ooh, then why are we having this heated debate over a word that literally is affecting the most effective race of individuals on the planet?
I think that is a good question, and I want to add an extra question, I guess, on top of that question, because I think that the thing people are probably thinking at this moment is, obviously, when you said specifically about using the word cracker, and you said, like, if they were, like, making fun of or something of that nature, something along the line your sentence said, I'm sure the listeners would know a little bit more verbatim if they rewind it. But basically, in regards to that, do you think that there's a more acceptability depending on whether, I mean, like, obviously I feel like no matter which one of those words you use, it just seems very distasteful to use it as something like a HI. But I feel like I've seen, I mean, I'm sure for those who are very into this activity and what some people will call lifers, as coaches who've been doing this forever, we've seen pieces, like I've seen national pieces where they're like a white girl would have definitely did say nigger in her piece, and it was used in a serious tone. It was done, for the effect of, being dramatic, and obviously there's so many things you want to convey when you're doing something like dramatic interpretation. Is there a little bit more leadway with that, do you believe? Or do you think that this is just surely like one locked, closeted idea, like no matter what the category is, no matter what the intention, this is definitely something that shouldn't be used at all?
Okay, 2 responses, but then a clarification on top. In my initial statement or response to the question, it wasn't being specific in regards to it being humorous or it being dramatic. That was a general all-purpose use response. So just to I want to make sure I got that clarification there. The first thing I have for that is this student that you're using as an example. Or actually, before I get to the example, let me go over the funny part of it, or it being used in a humorous way. Because I feel that my perspective, me personally, this is my opinion, it is actually worse when it is used in a humorous sense. Because now you are commodifying the term that has been used in a derogatory fashion to bodies that resemble ours for centuries, but now you're making it seem as though it should be something funny. So are you making fun of a black crackhead as if to say that there are not other races of crackheads? Or like what level of humor has to come out of that? So even if it is being done in a funny thing, I think that is the worst way to use racial slurs, especially in a place of humor. And I do believe that anyone that would be offended by being called a chink or called a cracker would feel the same way. So that's that first response to that. Secondly, when it comes to humor, when it comes to being interpreted in a dramatic fashion, as in the example that you presented a few moments ago, my question for that is, okay, well, is it in a realistic dramatic sense? Like, for example, is she actually placing herself in the role of a slave master and physically acting out the art of that word being used in history? Or is it one of these situations where she found an old Maya Angelou piece, hypothetically, and she decided that she wanted to say that out loud, and she's simply repeating the words that are in the prose or poetry interpretation that they're rendering?
Okay.
Like, it would have to be, in order for you to say, yes, this is acceptable, or no, it's unacceptable, it can't be a one response fits all.
Yeah.
The only way that you'd have to kind of do like acceptability is by going down to each individual performance, each individual interpretation, the author's intent, the interpreter's intent, how they convey that intent. And if you have to do all of these checks and balances in order to determine if something is okay or not, history shows us, especially in interp, that it just becomes not okay for everybody.
That makes a lot of sense. I can definitely understand and see that in this essence. I think that the first thing that popped in my head, I remember seeing a interp piece probably from, I believe, like 2015, maybe a duo piece on the national stage. And I do remember a white girl saying the N-word in the piece. And in that respect, it was, she was pretending to be like a slave, I think the daughter of a slave master, and used the word, which seemed very in context. And for myself, I didn't feel too affected by it. I don't fully know how, other individuals may have interpreted it, but it seemed to be used with well intentions, the way that it necessarily needed to be. I think that the question here that I feel is, when even using it with good intent, I believe that I would at least be able to ascertain, based on what you've said, that it seems like your opinions would lean towards, like, you probably just shouldn't use it anyway. You should just cut it out. And I want to challenge that, because I believe that while I can totally somewhat agree with that, there's a part of me that thinks that, like, if you can use it, and if it actually, like, is used with good intentions and does, represent what's needed in order to make the dramatic effect, and that's the scene that you really want cut in there and stuff like that, I think that it could, be at least okay for that to happen, because I guess when you look at just that and the grand scheme of the entire activity, like, I feel like if entertainment was our first value in speech and debate, I would definitely say yes. But I have to look at the scope of education, and I feel that there's something educational about being able to look at that and hopefully do the research and learn, like, how that was used in context and why you used it, and, all of these other things that are going to hopefully be advantageous to those individuals as adults, and learning how to, take, like, scripts and, like, manipulate them and use them for effect and things of that nature. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards, but definitely would love to hear more of your words about, can that be acceptable sometimes? Or, like, how can we truly create how can we create some type of method for making sure that when it's said, it is, in a way that's not disrespectful, or is there a way that's never disrespectful, or does that even occur in time, if that makes sense?
I definitely respect your position and your stance on it. I respect it and I understand it. And you know what? My bright-eyed, bushy-tailed self wants to agree with you wholeheartedly and say, absolutely, you know what? We should allow the educational space to continue to be educational, because there are some kids out there that fully know how to use racial slurs in the appropriate context. Because if we're just going to, I do understand how the discussion is about the N-word, but nigger is a racial slur. So if we're going to open the door for other races to say nigger in their pieces and their selections, then we're also opening the door for other racial slurs in a general sense to be used as well, right?
I would 100% agree with that. I think, and I don't like to say these words either, but I think that we even have to start thinking about, like, not just racial, but I guess other slurs that might come about. Like, if you're as long as you're in context, if it's okay to say nigger, like, is there a dramatic piece where you might be upset at your wife in the piece and you use the word cunt? Like, is that okay? Like, I don't know. Like with both of those examples, because I think they're both, like, some words that kind of make me like you said, clench your bag a little bit. Like, can we use some type of what would be an okay like filler? Like, I feel that, like, based on what I said, I think that the educational value is important, and I don't think it might lose the educational value if you replace the word. But I feel like if I have to cut out the entire scene, that might lose the educational value. So, like, let's say we do still use those scenes where those words pop up. What's an appropriate filler word? What can I use to substitute?
Well, hold on. Before we run that far ahead, before we run down that far down the road, let's kind of back up for a second. So we're accepting the fact that these are, like, we're accepting all racial slurs in this sense. So you're asking me to risk that the entire forensics community, that everyone in their entirety will all of a sudden now know how to use racial slurs in the appropriate context that will increase education in the forensic space and hopefully still not offend anyone, right? Because remember, we had to do a trigger warning on the top of this podcast for us to even say it. And the only reason why I felt even like, you know what, okay, let individuals really understand the impact of these triggers that we're saying here is the only reason why I am using certain racial slurs, because this is supposed to be an educational space. So let somebody call me a bigot for saying the words that I've used. Go ahead, try it. We're increasing education. So based on your perspective alone, it should be okay for me to openly discuss these slurs in front of individuals that they might offend, because that is what we're doing in the interpretation space. So if we accept that and we agree that that's the norm, and we're allowing individuals to make their own correct interpretations, then what is stopping a KKK supporter or or alt-right, if that's the appropriate context we're saying it in America, politically correct?
Yes.
How do we stop them from promoting their rhetoric in their interpretation selections by openly using a racial slur that fully supports the rhetoric that they've come out with? Because that is where we know that nigger is a racial slur, because those individuals use it in that negative context. So you are now giving them free rein to increase the education of being that member and allowing them to use it in the context of an interpretation selection, because you feel that individuals in this community will know how to use racial slurs without offending anybody. Mind you, this is the same community. This is the same community that just started implementing diversity inclusion methods on a grand scale and is still facing concerns in some areas with implementation as a whole. Is this something everyone might be aware of? No, but I'm pretty sure that individuals in their specific areas across the country will be able to kind of tilt their head and say, yeah, we're still working on that.
That is a very good point. Not to necessarily challenge that point, but to bring a light on the other side. I'm pretty sure, based on my schedule, I think the episode that I just recorded will come out before this one, where I had Justin Flynn on the episode, and we talked about guns and speech and debate. And, you know, like, unfortunately with, like, the school shootings and things of that nature that are happening, like, is it, like, where can we find out, like, about how to try to protect us to the most, like, ability? And I feel like in this realm, it's kind of the equivalent of, like, everybody having guns. You know, like, there are always going to be, I know this sounds, I don't know if it's,
no, keep going. We are actually on the same wavelength. Go, keep going.
Okay,
yes.
So I feel like this is like the equivalent of everybody having guns. And with that, you know, obviously there are a lot of people, specifically to kind of make sure this makes sense in the as being relative to our, like, racial slurs debate, like, there are always going to be people who hold the gun and know how to use it properly, but there are definitely going to be people who take the gun and they're just like, whatever, I can free reign with it, or I can use it, and then I can, like, make the excuse that it was for self-defense now and stuff like that. And there's so many ways that you can manipulate the gun to your advantage.
Oh man,
it's tough because, like, we don't want people to manipulate the gun to their advantage, considering like this, but should, like, having guns overall, will that, I mean, I'm going to bring it back to the racial slur now because, like, I'm losing the analogy a little bit, but with that, will using those racial slurs, is the education more important than the, I guess, mental safety? I don't know. Like, I know I'm, like, challenging my own opinion now, but, like, that's a question that pops up.
So the reason why I got so excited is because I was going to use school shootings as an analogy in order to kind of get this point across. But then I was like, oh, D, hold on. Oh, for everyone who doesn't know, I also go as D. So I kind of backtrack with myself, like, oh, you know what I'm saying? You kind of say some off-the-wall stuff sometimes. I don't know if the people are ready for that analogy, but thank you for opening the door. I'm going to go ahead and proceed through it.
Awesome.
So it's kind of like when I'm looking at you allowing certain individuals or allowing everyone on a grand scale to kind of, you know, go nuts, use racial slurs in your selections because we trust that you can do it, right? It's kind of like saying to educators, hey, guys, these kids are out here shooting people. Yes, they are shooting people in your workspace, and they are targeting you and the students that you are supposed to be, you know, taking care of. And we know that you throwing yourself in front of them is not going to protect them like it should. So let's just go ahead and allow everyone to bring in their firearm. We're going to trust that you went through adequate training. In fact, you need to show us your certificate to confirm that you did go to a firearms class and that you are, in fact, certified and legally allowed to carry it. I'm in Texas, so within the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Talk about how easy that is. You're legally allowed to, you know, take care of that. And, let's see how it works. And you know what? It's possible that some shootings could have been thwarted. It is possible that some individuals' lives could be saved. Possible. But you know what is probably more likely to occur, and one of the main reasons why lawmakers would not consider this? We are humans, and we make human errors. And that human error could be, oh, no, I put the wrong grade on your paper.
Yeah.
Or it could be, oh, no, I forgot to put the safety on. My bad. Or it could be, oh, no, this student threatened me. I felt genuinely unsafe. I thought they had a weapon, so I protected everyone. Or it could even be this extreme. You know what? I snapped. Too many students tried me today. Too many people came at me sideways. I didn't know what to do in this moment. I completely blacked out, and I acted. And that is something that has occurred, not only in the state of Texas, but within individuals within our own forensic community, where you have a moment where you just snap and you completely black out, and, oh, I don't remember cussing out that other coach. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that is.
Let's be 100% realistic. Like, as much as we like to say, oh, you know, that stuff doesn't happen, ha, ha, ha. No, it does. We just don't know about it. We just don't know about what happens all the time, and that's fine. So if lawmakers are smart enough to know that because human error exists, and because even if everyone is trained and everyone knows how to use a firearm or weapon, that accidents can still possibly happen in the classroom, why don't we as forensic educators, as coaches, know that even if we're using racial slurs in a selection, that's destined or that's designed to increase the education in our space, that those same educational spaces could still offend, could still harm individuals, and have an impact on their psyche that you're not really understanding. And I find it very interesting, not only in our community, but also just within our society in general. We are very sympathetic to other causes put on by other races and how offended they may feel at something. But when it comes to African Americans, when it comes to the blacks, it is, oh, you know what, but y'all can get over it. It's fine. We're going to still say the word. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, but don't you dare say anything. Don't you dare use a slur. Do you know of any Jewish slurs?
I do not, actually.
Isn't that interesting?
I mean, I know they exist.
Right.
I just don't, like, they're never used.
And they are the most protected community in our society when it comes to derogatory terms and comments, because the Holocaust was a big deal. Even if you argue that 10 million Jews lost their lives during that time period, let's still talk about the entirety of the diaspora, the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, the sugarcane fields. It does not compare. Yet we can't even think of a Jewish slur. And we're not talking about race. And even in this conversation, we're not talking about allowing all racial slurs in interp. We're just talking about the N-word.
Yeah.
Black bodies being commodified? Okay, here we are.
All right. Let me bring on this next question then.
That was question number one.
Yeah, that was question number one. I told you this is going to be top 3 podcasts we have this whole. Yeah, it's going to be great. All right, so okay. Now I'm gonna make sure I preface this with a trigger warning, because I feel like this is somewhat trigger warning worthy. So I'm just saying it right now, trigger warning. But like, so that adds on top of the trigger warning. But so I've had in the past 2 different occasions in my coaching life where someone, actually not white both of the times, I think one time white and another time Asian, or Asian descent in some way, Vietnamese or something of that nature, which same thing, but yes, either way, some type of Asian coach had asked me, basically, when it comes to this word or these words, we were specifically talking about the N-word at that time, but I think that this is an interesting question for all of these slurs. But should we ban these words from the use of anyone, even a black person using the N-word? Because if not, and we only allow the people who have the African American descent to use the N-word or whatever the slur is, wouldn't it be a competitive advantage for kids to use those words in competition?
So instead of, okay, so you're talking about eradicating all slurs in general then?
Yes, this question is more focusing on, should we just erase the words in general? Because if we only changed it to the middle ground and saying like, oh yeah, now only blacks can use the N-word, or only, the Chinese students can say chink, like, isn't that a competitive advantage from like maybe a dramatic side of like now as a white kid, my piece has no merit and ability to compete with the drama of yours because you use the N-word in your piece, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so I had to pause for a second because the debate half of me started laughing. Not only do I also actively coach debate events LD policy as well as interpretation and if I were to translate that question in the debate side, it's essentially saying, well, if we don't allow other races to run quote unquote black arguments or the black stuff, quote unquote. Like
that is the equivalent. Yep.
Should we not the competitive advantage, et cetera, et cetera? And I'm going to do a shameless plug right now. Shout out to the Global Debate Symposium, GDS, because I'm going to reference them in a course that was actually, in a class that was actually given at camp, it's not a camp, it's a workshop, that was actually given, and it was designed to help other students who do not identify as African American not only run this argumentation, but how to effectively answer it. And it all comes down to the educational value and the educational aspect of it. So it's not as copy paste when you're coming over to forensics, when you're coming over to the interpretation world. Mm-hmm. But if I were to try to kind of cross apply it, it would essentially be saying, like, if you were to remove slurs overall in general, I know we initially started with the N-word, and now we're talking about everybody. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Equality. Equality. If we are going to not allow anyone to say it, then you are essentially silencing the voices that interpretation is designed to bring to the forefront. Forgive me if this is incorrect. Nats 18 or 19, a moving selection in dramatic interpretation finals given by an Asian American individual who was telling the story of her grandmother's journey to the United States and essentially how, I'm not sure. They all kind of run together and you're just running around and working.
That's just us getting older.
Oh my goodness. Keep saying good morning. But she's basically telling you this story, and she's saying how her grandmother was saved or spared because all of these individuals gave their lives into making sure that nobody found her grandmother under the floorboards. And forgive me if that is completely incorrect way of telling the story. My apologies. But it was an amazingly riveting selection to where even if she were to use a slur that the individuals around her were being called, she, being that nationality, has the power to weaponize that term or that phrase or that slur more than anyone else could in order to convey the education that we're worried about being missing if we don't allow everyone to use it. Because this individual would be using it in the context of her upbringing and why she exists in the status quo. Like, come on now. So wow. You're telling me that I am now not allowed to say no coloreds were allowed to drink at the water fountain because for some individual, coloreds is considered a racial slur, right? Yeah. So now I can't say that my grandfather couldn't drink from the colored water fountain because no one is allowed to use slurs because everyone wanted to weaponize mine? Not even everybody wanted to say cracker. Everybody wanted to weaponize the N-word? So now I can't, what? Like, that to me just kind of confuses the entire perspective, and it makes me wonder if we really understand the point of increasing education in our state.
That is a great point. I want to do, I definitely, for the audience, I definitely want to do more, in the future, as opposed to just this one-on-one interview thing. I'd love to get, like, quote-unquote forums kind of thing going, maybe get, like, 3 to 5 people every time.
Absolutely.
On an episode.
I agree.
Because I know right now some people. I want to shout out Aaron Simmons because I love him and he's like one of the greatest coaches of all time, and I hope to be half the man he is by the time I'm his age. But like he would be really great on this episode too.
There would be so many individuals. Like shout out, Aaron Simmons, you're great. You're amazing. But, I mean, you can think of Jonathan Alston.
Ernest Tolman.
You got Ed Williams. You got Daryl Birch. You got, there's Shante Jordan. You got, oh, my goodness, Toya Green. There are so many, Ignacio Evans, shout out. There are so many individuals that could contribute to this conversation in a wholehearted way. Even Fred Duce in the interp world. There's so many individuals that could come forward and just be like, hey, let's all sit down and talk. And as much as I feel as though I might be preaching or saying something educational here, when I sit in rooms with them, I'm super silent and I'm just listening and making mental notes. People forget I'm there. I'm just oh, no, I'm fine. Y'all keep talking. Because they have it. So I don't even feel qualified to have this conversation in some respects.
I totally feel that. But obviously there are literally a ton of people. I mean, from local people that I know that nobody else would know to everybody. These are the conversations obviously that we do need to have. And I'm
Smith. I'm sorry. Just him on.
My mind started thinking about can I get Oprah Winfrey?
Man, no comment.
Hey, she was a national champion.
You're absolutely right. She was, but is she gonna? She might make fun of my cell phone. Bring her on. No, I'm playing. Please come, Oprah. Please come.
Yes, we need you, Oprah. Okay. I'm glad we got to answer a couple questions, but I know right now the entire audience is oh my God, I gotta go pee and get some food and stuff. So I'm gonna let y'all take a quick break because we've been talking for a while. But as usual, I hope you all are enjoying the episode so far. We're actually going to take a quick break, like I said. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, which is probably just me trying to get sponsors, so enjoy that. And if you want to join the conversation, please feel free to leave a comment down below on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to the podcast, as well as feel free to DM me on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, at the Forensics Guy, and we will be right back. All right, everyone, we are back. I hope you enjoyed that little blurb of me talking about whatever I talked about. And we are going to continue on with this episode. We have been talking about basically kind of just two things, but it turned into a lot. And we are really trying to answer some questions that I think a lot of people and a lot of coaches are having right now in the community. And I want to try to answer these as best as possible. We're gonna act like the first half didn't even happen. I want to switch to the next question that I have because I got to figure this out. And I've thought about this for so long. So let's talk about being stereotypical in an interp piece. We're definitely focusing on interp today. Sorry, but can you be stereotypical in your interp? For example, how do you feel about, I've seen those pieces. It's the tall, lanky white guy who acts like a sassy black woman in this piece, or that one kid who is definitely straight as a ruler, who has this just queer persona that he thinks it takes to be, queer in his piece. He's acting like that for either comedic effect, or usually these things are probably a little bit more in HI. But they're being these characters to have this either humorous or dramatic effect. Is it okay to use those stereotypes that we are used to, or what would be the best way for those people to be able to portray the characters in the least offensive way possible?
That is a good question, and I believe I'm going to give a much different perspective than you might have been looking for with this.
That's totally fine. That's what this is about.
Cool beans. I do not believe that interpers should not be allowed to. You know what?
Okay.
If y'all want to be the sassy black woman and be like, or whatever stereotype that you want to think that all black women are, knock yourself out. If that is what you want to do, I don't believe that that is where our focus needs to be when it comes to that question. I believe that our focus needs to be who is sitting in the back of the room adjudicating these stereotypes. Okay? Follow me for a second. It's not about the individual and what they are performing. Most of the time, it is your audience. And who are you able to adapt to the most? Or, I'm sorry, most interpers who are successful are the ones who are able to master the art of adaptability. It's never the same individual in the back of the room, and there are certain times when you know that you need to hype some stuff up and when you don't. For example, I know of some interpers who have selections that they will perform, and I am in the back of the room, and I finally get to see the selection, and I'm like, ooh, goody, let's see it. And my ranking is a little off from what others might have ranked them in the past. And they'll be like, oh, but what about this part? Or when coaches get together, the conversation was, oh, what about this part of the selection? Or what about when they did this? And I'll sit there and I'll be like, yo, that didn't happen in the selection. I'm not sure what you guys saw or what y'all are used to seeing or what you expect this selection to be, but that part was not in the selection. And I'm kind of glad it wasn't, because I probably would have been offended by it. Why would I be offended by it? Because most of the time when we're having this discussion over stereotypes and what should happen, it's usually a stereotype of somebody trying to do something black. It's usually what it is.
Okay.
And maybe this is because I am black. So this is the perspective that I'm used to having, and what I become most aware of is when it's happening in that space. Cool.
Okay.
So that means if there were more people like me, if there were more black women, or if there were more black men, or if there were more minority women or more minority men sitting in the back of these rooms adjudicating, would the same comedic effect occur? Would some things still be funny? Because it's very safe to say that from the birth of major forensics organizations, whether it's the Tournament of Champions or NSDA or the National Individual Events TOC or NCFL, the first 50 years of these organizations were pretty white.
Yeah, that's true.
You're pretty, in fact, it's safe to say that it didn't start becoming more diverse until the mid-thousands, when you started having your African-American coaches being inducted to the NSDA Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's when you started seeing them. And even then, it wasn't until, I want to say, 2015 that the national tournament started implementing diversity inclusion methods in order to ensure that there was diversity in semifinal and final judge pools. Why was this important?
That's true.
Why is this so important? If we want to go to the debate side, because I can never leave my debaters out,
True.
One of the things that are being advocated for heavy on the national circuit is to make sure that more more judges of color are adjudicating these debate rounds. So shout out to Shane Stafford and Sandra Berkowitz at the Blake School, because when they run their John Eady Holiday Debate Tournament, one of their big pushes is to make sure they preference hiring minority judges to sit in the back of their rounds and adjudicate, because they understand the importance of having that diversity in the judge pool. Why is that important? Because there needs to be a more diversified method of determining who the most dramatic individual in the country is, who the best original orator is in the nation. Ooh, Pam is the homie. Who the best orator in the nation is, who the best HI individual in the nation is, right? We have to have that diversity sitting in the back of the room. So the things that are considered to be funny are considered to be funny to what demographic? The stereotypes. Let me remove funny. Stereotypes. What stereotype is considered to be appealing to what demographic? Because I know that if I were to bust out and be the best little valley girl that I wanted to be in around with individuals that identify as valley girls, I wouldn't be very funny. Oh my goodness, hello everyone. I got my little Birkin bag with my little poodle inside of it. Do you like it? I made sure that her tutu totally matched my socks, right? If I did that to a whole bunch of valley girls, they would be like, oh my God, she is totally mocking us. But if I were to do that, but look, let's see how you sitting there laughing, giggling, right? If I were to do that in a room full of individuals that look like us, what would happen? We would be rolling. Oh my gosh, she's doing that too well with the, she said the poodle. All of that would be hilarious to us. So that would be more appealing versus that. So let the children do what they want. You know what? If y'all want to be stereotypical, if y'all want to act like me, if y'all want to act like, if they want to act like you, if they want to act like Jackie Chan, you know what? Let them do it. But who is going to determine if it's successful or not?
I love that interpretation because I think that it kind of speaks to, like, I think of it in, like, the realms of, like, the world when, you know, let's look at the 90s and, you know, let's look at the 90s, you know. There was a very specific demographic, majority demographic that made sure that the TV show Friends was super successful. Like,
ooh, yes.
Friends was like, personally, as an actual person, I think it's a decent show. It does have some laughs, whatever. But a lot of people will regard it as, like, the funniest show ever. And that is because of the demographic, most likely, that watched it and enjoyed it and related to it. But I feel like if you ask anyone who looks like us, you probably might hear the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Bernie Mac. Like, I used to love My Wife and Kids, even though it's not a 90s show. It's kind of like mid to late 2000s or something. I think, yeah, something like that. But all of those shows were, like, hilarious to me and did a significantly better job than Friends. I used to always run around talking to people about, like, if like the world wasn't the way it was in the 90s, you know, like if we did a much better job with diversity and all that, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air would have significantly surpassed Friends, like easy, not even a question, like in terms of funny. And that's a whole different opinion. But regardless of the matter, I do agree that it's all about the people who are, you know, in the back adjudicating, the people who, in my example, are actually sitting in front of the television and watching. And
absolutely.
And in this regard, we need to put those TV shows, I guess, in front of more diverse pools of people in order to truly get the best insight on if it's actually worthy of being a nationally successful piece.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm even going to knock your example even further out of the park. Like, if it was a double, it was about to be a home run. The show Friends, right? Oh, my God, the funniest show ever. Well, Friends is actually the enemy. Okay? Friends is the enemy of the Black community. Friends is our enemy. Why is Friends our enemy? Because Friends is a direct replica, an exact copy of the hit television show, hit sitcom, Living Single.
I knew you were going to say Living Single.
We are living single. Yes. In a 90s kind of world. Yo, that show was the blueprint for Friends because that show was so successful in our community, because Black people loved the mess out of Khadijah, right?
Yeah.
Because Overton was just like the most funniest individual that there was. Who do we end up getting? We get Jennifer Aniston and that one guy that we call Joey on the show.
Yeah.
They're replicas of the individuals that we grew up on. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. They realized that they had a hit on their hands, but instead of allowing the Black community to flourish with it, we're going to go ahead and, change the cast up a little bit. And they were the highest paying show on TV in the early thousands. Friends ate it.
Yeah. They got they living off some good money. Still. They never had to do anything. They could have told, probably some of them didn't, but they didn't have to do any other shows. They just keep getting recurring checks. They're probably still in the 100,000s.
Jeez, syndication, man.
From reruns. That's crazy.
Meanwhile, Kim Fields, she's not getting those kind of checks.
True. I mean, Will Smith is probably still getting some recurring checks from Fresh Prince.
Absolutely. But imagine how much more some individuals who came before him would even get.
I know. They paved the way. You gotta. I mean, man, all those shows,
even
the Jeffersons. Or Different World. Oh man, so just
that's what I was thinking.
A lot of shows paved the way. They really did. But okay. You did knock it out the park. So thank you for helping make that a triple double or whatever baseball term makes sense.
Shout out to them real quick. Oh man.
Okay, so another question. This is a little bit off of we're slightly off of the race stuff, but it still can definitely be pertained in some way. But for somebody who truly doesn't get it, and I've had conversations with people who don't get it, and I don't fully know the best way to explain it because they bring up some interesting arguments that, I don't know. Regardless, why do we need trigger warnings in speech? And should we have trigger warnings in speech because we don't? So, if a topic does involve, race beatings and rape and things of that nature, should there be a trigger warning? And why does there need to be a trigger warning?
That's a good question. And that's a good question. Okay. Before we started our cast today, just for time proximity, I was low-key hyperventilating in a distorted mental state. My blood pressure was fluctuating. I had some perspiration on my forehead, and I was feeling a little way. I was definitely feeling a little way. And why was all of that happening? Oh, my gosh, why? Well, trigger warning, I just found out that Kobe Bryant and his second daughter, Gianna, fell out of the sky today, and the 3 other individuals lost their lives. And if I didn't feel like my childhood was over before, that really rocked the mess out of me. And I say that because even now I'm trying to talk about it. It's a little rough. I'm still processing. It just happened a couple of hours ago. So when you're listening to this in the future, this is really fresh still. But if knowing that Kobe Bryant passed away could put me in that state, I can't imagine the state that some individuals could be put in if something that deeply affects them or impacts them hits them and they didn't see it coming. It came out of left field. I just came to sit down in this room and adjudicate or observe, and now I'm hit with this traumatic situation that I did not want to think about. So in selections that depict actions of rape, do I want to admit this? That's fine. We're disclosing stuff. my very first year of coaching, I had one of my students graphically depict a self-abortion.
Oh, wow.
Because that was the nature of the selection that we were interpreting. Man, it was Whoopi Goldberg's Spook Show. There was there's Surfer Girl, if you want to know what I'm talking about, Whoopi Goldberg's Spook Show, her one-woman show, Surfer Girl.
Okay.
Surfer Girl is a Surfer Girl Valley chick, completely ditzy. She gets pregnant by a surfer boy, doesn't even know what's happening. She just knows that she really likes him, gets pregnant, and she's told that when you get pregnant, you're supposed to take a hanger and shove it up yourself to self-abort. And she depicts this in the selection. And my student was bold enough to listen to her first-year coach and be like, you know what, Miss O, we're going to do it. And she did it. And it was riveting. It qualified for state. It qualified for NAT. Like, she did what she needed to do. But I'm sure that there were some individuals that saw that selection that weren't okay after they saw it.
Yeah.
Because of how graphic it was. And it truly was, it was very intense. It's one of the most daring moments that I can say that I've had in my career up to this point. And I feel when I look back on it now that I have all of these years of experience under my belt, and I think about the people who did have to witness that, I feel bad for them because they didn't see it coming. And I'm sure that selection ended up fizzling out, not because it wasn't dramatic enough, but because that shock value was just too much. It was too much.
Yeah.
So I would like to apologize to anyone that might have been affected by that. And because I have that personal reference, I say that, yeah, we have to have these trigger warnings on things. We have to let people know ahead of time that there might be some content that can come out of this election, this piece, this case that I'm running, this strategy that I'm pushing here that might affect you if you are, in fact, affected by certain topics and situations.
True.
And it's better that people know that up front than having to experience it and deal with it and relive it and then figure out how to get over it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really great answer. For those who are listening who might have, before the question was answered, disagreed, I do hope that helps to answer, because it's kind of like just a lot of people. I don't remember the quote verbatim, but there's a kind of a quote that says, basically privilege is like not seeing a problem with something that doesn't affect you specifically or something like that. But I feel like that kind of speaks to that. It's just like, typically if you probably disagree with the whole trigger warning things, it's probably because you've never had a situation where something like that happened and it allowed you to be triggered in a way. So I hope that you can somehow empathize through individuals who have had things happen and understand why they would need just a trigger warning is not difficult. It's literally just a small verbal warning before something happens, to let them know that, they should either leave if they're not comfortable or figure out a way to, best calm themselves in the situation. So it's
absolutely,
it's definitely needed. And yeah, I definitely hope that helps.
And just to add a little more to that before we do move on, anyone who does kind of disagree with that situation or thinks that we shouldn't have those trigger warnings, I think they forgot what everyone did to Eminem back in the early 2000s when they crucified him for his content and forced those parental advisory explicit content labels to be put on music, CDs and stuff before they left the shelf.
True.
I think everyone's forgetting that even when we turn on TV, we get a trigger warning. It has to say, if it's PG-13, it has to say rated R or whatever label or whatever it is. It actually has to say that not only on television but in movies. So everything in our life has a trigger warning. Geez, your food has a nutritional facts label on the back of it. That's a trigger warning. If you
That is
this,
actually.
You eating 230 calories, Sam, in one serving. Come on.
That is a great way to word that. That's so true.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, like trigger warnings exist everywhere. Wow, yeah, that's great. Okay, and the last question. Wow, we have been talking for a great amount of time. This is awesome. So the last question is probably super simple, but I want to get to every single question that I had. So let's go back. I don't even know if I want to ask this question because I feel like it's kind of answered. But okay, basically going back to like racial slurs and them being used. I honestly feel like we're at a state now where this hopefully would never happen. But let's assume that it is some white girl who's doing a piece and it's a HI and she, drops the N-word in a funny way, and she makes it all the way to nationals, and she's on the national stage, and she does it, and everybody is like just freaking out because this is slightly like, whoa, like what just happened? This is crazy. In that situation, who takes the blame? Is it the coach or the student?
First of all, Emmett Till just rolled over.
Fair.
Why did it, for those who, what Emmett Till, why did Emmett, well, because jokes played by little white girls have cost black bodies a tremendous amount of life in the last century.
Yep.
Start there, okay?
Yep.
And that's only because that's the example that you use. So that's how I kind of pictured it. It's just like, oh my gosh, ha ha ha, nigger. Really? Second, at this point, I'm not even looking at the student and the coach. If we're talking about nationals, NSDA nationals, I am sure that the student and the coach will be handled. But a step further, I'm looking at the district.
The judges,
not the school district, not even the judges. I am looking at the individuals that are sitting as committee chair and leading the district where that questionable content came from, and ask if due diligence was not done to ensure that the content of the selection was up to par with national standards. Because you're telling me that not only is this individual here at nationals promoting this education, but that means that somewhere along the line, other students lost the right to have that platform because this individual was allowed to weaponize a racial slur as a joke and make it all the way. So I have questions not only for the student, but you know what, you're a child, not only for the coach, but you know what, you didn't just show up here. You didn't just arrive. You got cleared through your district. So I'm going to your district. I'm going to your judge coordinator. I'm asking those questions because this isn't just a one child decided to get to nationals. This is how did this fall through the cracks. We've had in the last decade, or since I've been in forensics, we have had two situations where individuals were disqualified in the final round of humorous interpretation because of rule violations. One was transitions were being misused. The other was your selection doesn't exist, like at all. Like it does not exist. I ain't calling. No, you gotta do some history. I'm gonna let you gotta do some history. You know what I'm saying? If you want to find out what I'm talking about, go and look through some of them videos for the last 10 years, and you'll notice some discrepancies in some of the videos. Go do your research. Buy that resource package if you haven't already. So you have that going on, and I'm sure that once those violations were called out, it wasn't just held to the coach and the student. because I know one of those children has to pay back scholarship money, okay? Pay back scholarship money. But you also have to look at, okay, did no one check documentation at the district tournament?
Yeah.
Did no one, even if you want to be extra petty, did no one check documentation after break? No? We let this get to finals. We're at the end. What happened to all these checks and balances that we have in place? What happened? Did they just fall asleep? Did they just fail? Because I know they work. Trust me, I know they work. Because I've been checked and double-checked and triple-checked, and I've seen arguments because of checks happen in front of my.
Yeah.
I know that the checks happen. So how did this occur? So just to add a little bit more spice to that answer, because you're right, we did kind of go over that, the humorous part of it earlier in the discussion.
Yeah.
But who are we holding accountable for that?
That's, man. That's a good, that's a great answer and a good point that I won't even add anything to because it's finished. But okay. So I very much so hope that every single listener has enjoyed this great this great dive into everything. It's
everything.
For real. It's been a great episode, and it's been very honored. I have been very honored to have you on the episode, and thank you once again so much just for taking the opportunity and talking with us and answering some questions and giving us your insight. To all the listeners, make sure you're giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places where podcasts are sold or whatever. And keep listening. Share this with a coach, a judge, a parent, whoever that loves speech and debate that could definitely use this. And keep sharing, keep spreading the word, keep doing speech and debate, and keep impacting the community.
Absolutely. Tell everybody. And Dante, let me just pause real quick, do a little to say thank you to you for creating this platform, for giving coaches and other individuals on the circuit the space to just kind of come out and speak and say their perspective. And just thank you for creating a space for us to even engage in this type of dialogue, to trigger those senses and get individuals thinking a little bit, get the wheels turning. Like, I greatly appreciate the time that you dedicate to this. Thank you so much, sir, for all you do.
Of course. Thank you. I love this, and obviously, as you all know, I love speech and debate. Follow me, The Forensics Guy, and I will continue to hopefully keep posting this. And, big shout-out to everybody listening. Shout out to all the coaches that will listen, because at some point everybody will be an audience member. And big rest in peace to Kobe Bryant, because I think he deserves it. I hope to one day be the Kobe Bryant of speech and debate. So I love you all and keep listening. I will talk to you later. Peace out.